In a post-apocalyptic world infested with zombies, called infected, who can kill you and turn you into one of them with a single bite, a young woman and a man marked by their past cross a world of dangers in search of freedom. But that's not all. She is the only one immune to the fungus transmitted through the bites of the infected, and may be the key to saving humanity. The year is 2023. A young woman is observing nature in the middle of a long-abandoned landscape. Her name is Abby, and she is standing next to makeshift graves where her friends and family are. Joel, in order to save Ellie from death, killed all the fireflies in his path. Along with Abby are Nora, Mel, Owen, and Manny. They ask themselves, why did he do that? Nora says she heard a rumor that the girl who accompanied Joel was immune, but Mel interrupts her and says that is impossible. They discuss this, and at that moment Owen interrupts them, saying that they should worry about the group. Mel asks what to do and if they will look for other fireflies. Manny answers that there is nowhere else to look since they were all there. Owen says that Ed's brother, Isaac, lives in Seattle and that he could help them. Abby speaks up and says that they will not do anything until they find Joel. Owen says that he does not have much information about him, suggesting that it would be difficult to find him, but Abby describes him accurately. She wants revenge. Owen says that Joel took the only car they had and that the wisest choice at the moment would be to go to Seattle and ask Isaac for help and, then, find Joel and then kill him. Abby agrees. Everyone agrees. Abby kneels in front of one of the graves and places a medal on it. She whispers the word, slowly. She turns to Owen and says that when she finds Joel, she will kill him slowly. 5 years pass. Ellie is fighting in a barn against a man who is twice her size, but she makes up for it with agility and technique. The fight is intense, but Ellie manages to overpower him and he surrenders. It was training. Jesse is helping her train. She now lives in the city of Jackson, Wyoming. Joel also lives there. He is at home fixing an appliance when Dina comes in. She tells him that the city's pipes are old and made of ceramic. They are broken and they need someone who can fix them. Dina takes the opportunity to ask Joel to teach her how to fix them like he does. He shows her how and where to fix them. She pays attention, but it was all a trap. She wanted to ask why Ellie is angry with him. He believes that they are living a new experience for both of them. After all, his daughter is not yet Ellie's age and Ellie did not have a father. He believes that no one gets along with their parents at that age. He also admits to being overprotective, but he really doesn't know what he did to irritate her so much. He ends by telling Dina what to do with the old pipes. Outside the city, Ellie and Tommy practice shooting zombies from a long distance. She does well and manages to hit them. They comment on how many zombies are walking around. Tommy tells them to go back because he wants to send a patrol to check the surroundings. Ellie volunteers to go, but Tommy says he'll put her at the city gate. Ellie complains and says the job is useless. Tommy confesses that Joel asked him to put her off the patrol for a while. She says that she's of legal age now and that Joel doesn't order her around anymore. Besides, she doesn't need to worry about being bitten because she's immune. Tommy asks her not to mention it and that they agreed never to talk about it. Ellie yells that she's already been bitten by a zombie and she's immune. She insists that she wants to stay on patrol. He gives in and lets her continue, going against his brother's request. Back in the city, Joel talks to Maria about some repairs the city needs. Maria emphasizes that they need to move faster with the work. Many refugees from other lands have been seeking shelter in Jackson and the city is becoming too small for so many people. Joel says that bringing so many people into the city is a mistake. There is no way to clear so much space at once. Before taking care of the outsiders, they need to take care of their own, otherwise they will end up not helping anyone. At that moment Tommy arrives, but Joel was already leaving. Before leaving, Maria tells him that he was also a refugee. Joel leaves. He goes straight to Gail's house. She is his psychotherapist. They start a conversation. Joel says that he followed her advice and stayed away from Ellie. However, she does not even greet him. He comments on how Dina treats him with respect, as if he were her father, and talks about the difference between Ellie and her. Gail suggests that Joel tell the truth. She thinks he is hiding something. People are only able to overcome something if they come clean, but people are afraid. She follows her own advice and throws in Joel's face that he killed her husband, Eugene, and she hates him for it. She tried to forgive him, but she couldn't, even though she knows he had no choice and she feels a lot of hate for that. Now she says it's his turn to say what he's afraid of. Regardless of what it is and how bad it was, she will help him. She asks if he hurt her and he says no. She asks him what happened then. He gets up, says he saved her and leaves. At home, Ellie is minding her own business when Dina comes to visit her. She went to call Ellie to patrol. They go out and get their horses. Outside, Jesse tells them the patrol mission for a new route. He asks them to be very careful because there are reports of new infected people outside the city. He sets the rules before they leave and says that Kat is the leader of the patrol and lets them go. On the way, Dina asks if Ellie is going to the New Year's party tonight and if she's going with anyone. Ellie says she is, but that she wouldn't go with anyone. Dina suggests going with Kat, after all they used to hang out, but Ellie refuses. Dina says that if she wants she can go with her. Ellie asks if Dina and Jesse broke up and she says yes. At that moment, Kat stops the patrol. There were trails of blood on the path. Without blinking, Ellie and Dina follow the trail against Kat's will. At the end of the trail, they find a dead bear and some infected. Apparently, the bear and the infected killed each other in an unprecedented fierce battle. At least one of them seems to have survived the confrontation. Ellie and Dina decide to go in and explore the place. There they realize that there were at least 2 infected in the place. They make a plan to kill the creature and split up. Ellie attracts the attention of one of them. She approaches and jumps on the infected and strikes several blows to its neck with her knife. Soon after thinking that the danger had passed, the floor gives way and Ellie falls to a lower floor. The place is completely abandoned and locked, and the only way out seems to be the way she came in. While Dina goes to look for something to get Ellie out of there, she looks around and explores the place. When suddenly she hears something. She gets scared and looks around carefully. Something is lurking. An infected is hunting her. The creature appears behind Ellie, but does not attack. Ellie runs after the infected, but it hides. The creature seems to be more intelligent than the other infected and, like Ellie, acts cautiously. It lures Ellie, and when it has the opportunity, the infected attacks her. The two fight intensely, but the infected is too strong and ends up biting Ellie. Finally, she manages to draw her gun and kills the infected. At that moment, Dina arrives on the lower floor and goes to help Ellie. She finds Ellie on the floor and the infected shot next to her. Back in the city, the council meets to hear what Ellie and Dina have to say about what they saw on patrol. Ellie reports that the infected was intelligent. She acted calmly, planned, lured, stalked, and attacked Ellie. They discuss the situation and release them both. The council debates in private about what they heard. Maria says she has a bad feeling. They state their opinions, but with only a few hours left until New Year's Eve, they end the meeting. At home, Ellie has to disguise the scar from the infected woman's bite and uses her knife to make a scar over the current one. No one in town other than Joel and Tommy knows that Ellie is immune. Later, Joel goes to visit her. He went to ask if she's going to the event later. Ellie says she's not sure yet. Joel sees Ellie's guitar lying in the corner. He picks it up, says he'll fix it, and leaves. At the New Year's Eve party, Ellie watches from the corner as Dina dances and has fun. She smiles and exudes charisma. Jesse shows up and talks to Ellie. He also watches Dina. Ellie says she'll give them 2 weeks to get back together, but he says it won't happen. Ellie asks why, but at that moment Dina appears and asks Ellie to dance. They talk and dance very closely. The atmosphere seems romantic and Dina approaches Ellie. Gina seems to want something more from Ellie. They look at each other and kiss. At that moment, Seth interrupts the two and says that it is a family event and they are in a church. Dina apologizes and does not argue. She pulls Ellie and they leave. But he insults them by calling them dykes. Joel appears out of nowhere and pushes Seth away. Maria takes Seth out of the church. Ellie fights with Joel for what he did. She says that she does not need his help and he leaves. Later, she returns home and Joel is on the porch with his guitar. They look at each other, but Ellie does not speak to him and goes inside the house. In the next scene in another part of the city, where they were fixing the city's pipes, it is noted that the infective fungus is spreading through the old plumbing. Also, in the forest, Abby and the wolves approach Jackson. Their mission? Kill Joel. In the corridors of an abandoned hospital, Abby enters carefully and with her gun in hand. She finds herself talking to herself, as if in a dream. She tells herself not to go into the room ahead because he is dead. Abby ignores her and goes in anyway. You can hear her screams outside. Abby was sleeping. She wakes up. She gets up and walks to the window. Abby realizes that Jackson is very big. At night it was impossible to see how big the city was. In addition, the cold is very intense. Manny notices the scenery outside and is also amazed by the size of the city, as are Mel and Nora. Owen stood guard and described the city to them. They had light, weapons, patrols, strategic routes and a single entrance and exit. But in addition to that, they still had to find Joel in the middle of all that. Abby suggested approaching a patrol and forcing them to tell them where Joel was. But the plan had too many variables and was soon discarded. Owen said he had an idea, but needed to improve it. Abby said she would stand guard outside and left. As she left, she realized how terrible the cold was outside. As Abby walked away, inside, everyone talked about the plan. Owen confessed that the plan was to convince Abby to go home, otherwise they would all die. Meanwhile, in Jackson, Jesse went to Ellie's house to call her to go on patrol. They talked about the night before and Ellie told her about the kiss. As they left, Ellie noticed strange movement in the city. Jesse explained that they found a pile of infected frozen in the snow nearby, but that wasn't the problem. As they approached, another 30 infected came out from under the pile of dead infected. They were using their bodies as thermal insulation to protect themselves from the cold. There may be more like them. Ellie hurries and says she's going to patrol with Joel, as if it were a father-daughter day. Jesse finds it strange, since she and Joel weren't talking to each other. Ellie says there's still them and that it's complicated, but everything will be okay. Jesse says Joel has already left to patrol with Dina. Ellie is visibly disappointed, but Jesse tells her Joel went to look for her, but she was sleeping and he didn't want to wake her up. They go to meet Maria. She asked to call Ellie. Inside, Tommy speaks to everyone. He makes a plan with the townspeople in case infected enter the town. He agrees on escape routes and hiding places to take shelter. The security team is in charge of the weapons. But the most important thing is to get out of the main street. Tommy ends the meeting and Maria takes Ellie to Seth in the kitchen. Seth apologizes for the night before. He says he drank too much and overdid it. As a peace offering, he made sandwiches for them to take to the patrol. Ellie listens to what Seth has to say and leaves immediately. Meanwhile, Abby continues to stand guard outside the shelter, when suddenly she hears something. It was 2 patrolmen on horseback. In Jackson, Tommy and his patrolmen reinforce the city gates. He receives a message on the radio, but the audio is distorted and the signal is weak. He orders the patrolmen to return. A blizzard seems to be on its way. Far away, Jesse and Ellie receive the warning, but they are too far away and decide to take shelter nearby. Jesse takes them to an abandoned store. He went there when he patrolled with Eugene, Gail's husband. Ellie finds a firefly medal. It was Eugene's. Jesse says he was a firefly, but he deserted. Jesse says it was sad how Joel had to kill Eugene. It was a tragic end for a man with so many skills. Elsewhere, Abby follows the patrollers she spotted. She keeps a safe distance and tries to go down the hill, but ends up slipping and falling into a huge pile of frozen infected. They all seem lifeless. Suddenly one of them starts to move. Abby realizes that something is happening. Infected start to come out in droves from under the frozen infected. Abby runs away, but there are too many infected. They chase her relentlessly, but she manages to climb a ladder on the wall. She keeps running in search of a way out, but just like her, the infected turn around and corner her on the other side. Only an old fence separates them. The creatures are ferocious and there are a lot of them. They start to break through the fence and one of them manages to get through, attacking Abby. Suddenly a shot saves her. It was Joel. He saved her without knowing who she was or what she intended to do. He protects her and they flee into a barn, with Dina shouting for Joel. At that moment, Abby discovers who he is, but the gate won't hold for long. Abby says she came from the mountain and that her friends are there and are armed. That would be a good place to take refuge. Without many options, they leave for the mountain. In Jackson, Tommy tries to talk to Joel through the radio, but he doesn't answer. He insists, but no response. Tommy tells them to keep sending the signal and leaves in a hurry. While Ellie and Jesse wait for the blizzard to pass, they receive a signal from Jackson. The signal is unstable, but she says she can't reach Joel and Dina before the signal cuts out. The two run off in search of Joel and Dina. In Jackson, a man discovers that the infectious fungus has settled inside the city's old plumbing. Joel and Dina, accompanied by Abby, run for their lives. Right behind them, more infected people come out from under the snow. There are hundreds of them, but they are running in the opposite direction. They are heading towards Jackson. All the patrolmen and residents run to their posts and prepare for the confrontation. They shelter children and the elderly and load their weapons. The infected run madly towards the city walls. The patrolmen reinforce the gates and Tommy realizes at that moment the size of the problem. The infected throw themselves against the city gates and the battle begins. The patrolmen shoot at the infected and explode gallons of gasoline on them. It is a bloodbath, but there are many infected who, even in flames, still attack the city gates. On the way to the mountains, Joel sees what is happening in Jackson from afar and thinks about going back, but Dina and Abby convince him to go up and recover. A true inferno has broken out at the gates of Jackson, and there seem to be not enough bullets to contain so many infected. Tommy hears a strange roar amidst so many screams. He runs to the other side and sees a bloater. The creature is huge and very strong. It throws itself against the city wall. Tommy prepares himself, and they enter. A horde of zombies thirsty for flesh and blood invades the city. They fight them with gunfire and fire, but for every patrolman there seem to be 100 infected. They are fast and strong. From the top of the building, Maria tries to stop the bloater. Tommy calls the monster's attention with gunfire and it heads towards her. While the creatures seem to multiply, Tommy runs from the bloater but ends up cornered. In a moment of great tension, Tommy faces the enormous creature head-on. He uses the flamethrower on the infected, but the creature seems not to fear the fire. Tommy uses the flamethrower with everything, but the gas in the cylinders runs out. When he thinks his end has come, the bloater cannot resist the burns and falls to the ground almost completely burned. Maria runs to the city kennel and releases the dogs. The animals run onto the battlefield and attack the creatures to kill, with murderous instinct. At the top of the mountain, Abby's friends are looking for her. They see horses coming and realize it's Abby. They go inside. Abby introduces everyone to Joel and Dina, who help them warm up. Joel tries to contact Jackson on the radio, but to no avail while Abby tells everyone that he's Joel. Immediately, Manny grabs Dina and puts a gun to her head. Joel tries to fight back, but he's outmatched. Abby promises not to hurt Dina, and she asks Mel to sedate the girl and put her to sleep. Joel realizes that they're fireflies, and he also realizes that Abby is there because of him and what he did. While they're sedating Dina, Abby asks Joel when the last place he saw the fireflies was. He replies that it was in South Lake. Abby grabs a gun and shoots Joel in the leg. She tells Mel to apply a tourniquet to stop the bleeding. She wants to enjoy her revenge slowly. Abby reveals that the Dr. Joel killed back then was her father. At that moment, everything fell into place for Joel. Abby recounts her pain at losing her father. She speaks while torturing Joel. Everyone watches in horror as Abby behaves, blinded by hatred. She beats Joel until he can barely move. She strikes him incessantly, one after the other, without caring about her own pain. At that moment, Ellie finds the place where they are, and when she enters and sees her father on the floor covered in blood, she tries to save him, but Manny and Nora restrain her. Ellie screams for Joel, who looks at her without being able to say a word. She cries and despairs as she watches Abby complete her revenge. As a final act, Abby sticks a sharp piece of metal into Joel's neck and kills him right in front of Ellie. Joel met his end in a tragic way. Ellie cries and swears revenge, but Manny kicks Ellie so hard that she can barely breathe or move. She crawls to Joel and removes the piece of metal from his neck. She stands there, hugging Joel's lifeless body. The wolves leave and leave them there. In the city, all that remains are the ruins and piles of bodies of infected people and city dwellers that mix together. The scene is chaotic. Jesse finds Ellie and Dina. The three of them return to Jackson, taking Joel's body with them. The episode begins with a post-war setting left by the battle between the city of Jackson and the army of infected people. The mood is one of mourning and sadness. Inside a makeshift facility that serves as a morgue, a woman cleans Joel's body. At that moment, Tommy enters the morgue and the woman passes the baton to him and leaves. Tommy looks at his brother's lifeless body, still looking in disbelief. He begins to clean Joel's body slowly as a farewell and asks his brother to send Sarah a kiss when he gets to heaven. Sarah is Joel's daughter who died in the first season of the series when all the chaos was just beginning. In the next scene, Jackson's hospital is crowded and chaotic with wounded people after the war with the infected. Among the wounded is Ellie, who is seriously injured because of the kick she received from Manny when she tried to save Joel's life. She is stunned and suddenly starts screaming, remembering her father's death. The doctors hold her down and sedate her so that she can calm down. 3 months have passed since the war with the infected, and the people of Jackson are rebuilding and getting back on their feet. There is a lot of work to be done. In another part of the city, Ellie is having an appointment to be discharged because she has already recovered from her injuries. But before she can be discharged, the doctor asks her to wait and leaves the room to find someone else to talk to her. Gail enters. Ellie is not very happy to see her because she does not like therapy, but they talk anyway and Ellie reveals that she misses Joel. Gail brings up the subject of the fight that Ellie and Joel had at the New Year's Eve dance. Ellie confesses that after the dance she found him on the porch of her house, But she didn't talk to him and she regrets it. However, this last moment does not define the relationship she had with her father. Gail reveals that in the last conversation she had with Joel, he said that he hurt Ellie, but it didn't make sense because the reason for this was the fact that he saved the girl. Ellie says that she doesn't understand the meaning of this and that he saved her many times. Gail ends and discharges Ellie. As she walks out of the hospital, we see that Ellie wasn't completely honest with the psychologist. When she returns home, everything seems silent and empty. Ellie goes to Joel's room and on top of his bed is a box with his belongings. One of these belongings is the gun that Joel used. She puts the gun away and walks to her father's clothes and cries with sadness and longing as she remembers. At that moment Dina arrives and Ellie comes down to talk to her. Dina made cookies for Ellie so that she wouldn't get mad at what she's going to say next. Dina reveals that when Ellie arrived at the hospital 3 months ago, she asked her a question. Ellie asked if Dina knew any relevant information about who killed Joel. At the time, Dina lied about it, but the truth is that she knows the names of almost everyone responsible for Joel's death who was there that day. She hadn't said anything because Ellie was very injured at the time, and if she told what she knew, her friend would go after those responsible for Joel's death anyway. Ellie gets mad at Dina for lying and keeping the information, but Dina says that in the last few months the city has been full of sadness and funerals everywhere and no one would bother to go after those responsible. The best thing to do was to let them go and go back to where they lived. Dina gives them all their names: Manny, Owen, Mel, Nora, and Abby. Ellie gets excited and filled with anger and hope, asking next where they are from. Dina replies that she saw an embroidery on their backpack and remembered a story Eugene once told her, and gives Ellie a drawing with the wolf symbol, assuring her that they were from Seattle. Ellie asks if anyone else knows about this and Dina says that only the two of them know. Now they need a plan to get revenge and they go to Tommy to tell him what they know and ask for help. But Tommy is reluctant to go on a revenge mission after everything the city went through after the war. Ellie argues that if it were the other way around, Joel would already be halfway there. Tommy, however, counters by saying that he would do the same, but if it was to save his life and not avenge his death. Tommy asks for some time to talk to Maria, and if he is going to do it, he should do it the right way. He wants to hold a council meeting and open the vote to the city and hear what everyone thinks. Ellie accepts the condition and decides to wait. Before leaving, Tommy tells Ellie where he buried Joel. She says that when they leave for Seattle, she will visit him. The scene cuts to a trail in the middle of the forest. A man walks alone and watches. He whistles loudly and further ahead is a group of men, women, and children. This group is the Seraphites, better known as Scars, and the whistles are a code to let them know that the path is safe. A girl asks where they are going and the man answers that they don't know yet. She asks why the prophet couldn't protect them, but the man answers that the spirit of the prophet is still alive and protecting them. As a show of trust, he hands the girl a hammer. At that moment another whistle is heard. This time it was different. Someone was coming. They spread out and hide among the trees and bushes. The frightened girl asks if they are demons, and the man answers that they are wolves. Back in Jackson, Ellie practices punching a sandbag with Jesse's help. They end the training and talk a little. Ellie talks about the meeting about the trip to Seattle. Jesse is now part of the council. She asks if she can count on his vote, but he says he can't say anything before the meeting. As a council member, he tells Ellie to write her thoughts down on paper so she can be clear with the council and the town. Ellie doesn't like Jesse's attitude very much and the boy leaves. The next day, at the council meeting, they listen to the town. Many people speak and give their opinions about the situation and Joel's murder. The townspeople are not looking for revenge and think it is too risky and would leave the town unprotected. At that moment, Seth gets angry and raises his voice. He was the first to vote in favor of leaving to seek revenge for Joel, even though his vote doesn't count. This surprises Ellie. Seth finds it unacceptable that the wolves invaded his city and killed one of their own in his home. He says that if they don't get revenge, they'll come back and do it again. Now it's Ellie's turn. She stands up and takes a piece of paper out of her pocket. She followed Jesse's advice and wrote a speech to make herself better understood. She says that she's there to ask for everyone's help, but not for revenge, but for justice. After finishing, the council opens the vote and an air of suspense takes over the place. The votes start out divided, but it doesn't take long for them to lean towards one side. The result of the vote was negative, so there won't be any group heading to Seattle to execute Abby and the wolves. Ellie stands up with everyone and leaves. In another part of town, Gail watches a children's baseball game. While she watches, Tommy shows up to talk to her and says he saw her at the meeting. He confesses that he's afraid Ellie will do something stupid. Gail suggests they have a session, because of the house. Tommy says he's afraid she'll end up following the same path as Joel. Gail says that if Ellie chooses a path, it won't be because Joel put her there, but because she wanted to. She ends by saying that there are people who have no salvation. In the next scene, Ellie is at home in the middle of the night and is carrying the gun that belonged to Joel. At that moment, Dina arrives. She knows what Ellie is planning and asks to come in. Ellie lets her in and says that her friend won't convince her to stay, but Dina isn't there for that. She asks Ellie what the plan is and Ellie replies that she plans to go to Seattle to kill Abby. Ellie's plan soon falls apart when Dina shows all the weaknesses in her simple plan. She takes out a map and shows Ellie a safe and direct route to Seattle, avoiding the highways. She also made a list of everything she will need to take, from food to ammunition. Ellie asks how she will get all of this, but Dina has a contact and has already arranged everything she needs. They just need to meet at the city's east gate at 3 a.m. At the agreed time and place, Ellie waits for Dina, who arrives shortly after, but besides her, Seth is also there. Ellie doesn't like his presence very much, even though he defends her cause. He brought a gun and asks to trade it with Ellie. According to him, the gun he brought is better. Ellie accepts the trade. After all, Seth is helping them and has managed to get them transportation and all the supplies they will need on the way. Before leaving, Seth extends his hand to Ellie, wishing them good luck, and they shake hands. At dawn, on the way, Ellie stops to visit the place where Joel is buried while Dina waits on the horse. Ellie places coffee beans on his grave. She says goodbye to her father while remembering the moments they lived together, and they leave. They travel a long way during the day. Dina asks who was the first person she killed. Ellie doesn't answer who was the first. Instead, she answers who was the second, and they continue their journey. At night, a heavy rain fell out of nowhere and they took shelter in a tent. Inside, Dina brings up the subject of the kiss on New Year's Eve. They act as if it wasn't important, since Dina was drunk. In response to Dina, Ellie gives the kiss a score of 6. Dina says that she got back together with Jesse and the mood changes, but soon after she confesses that she thinks Jesse is a sad person and hopes that's just how he is, because if the problem isn't him, then it would be her. Having said that, they turn off the lights to go to sleep, but before that, Dina confesses that she wasn't as drunk as she thinks. The next day, they continue their journey. On the way, they find the body of a Scar who had been shot. Dina notices something among the trees and goes to check it out. When she realizes it, she runs back and vomits, shocked by what she saw. Ellie goes to check out what Dina had seen that made her so sick, and when she gets there she comes across several bodies. They were the Seraphites who were traveling in a group, and among the bodies was that of the girl who was traveling with them at the beginning of the episode. Ellie assumes that it could have been the wolves and that if that is the case, the situation is much worse than they imagined. After much more time traveling, they arrive in Seattle. There, somewhere in the city, is Manny talking on the radio while watching the surroundings from above. The wolves have military-grade transport and weaponry, as well as an army of trained men and women. The episode begins with a group of soldiers in an armored military vehicle. One of them tells how one of his approaches to a voter went while the others laugh and enjoy the story. One of them asks why they call citizens voters, and one of them responds by saying that it is because they took away their right to vote, and as a mockery they call them voters. This was Fedra's sergeant and his name is Isaac. At that moment they come across a group of people surrounding the car. Isaac decides to go out to talk to these people and tells everyone to stay in the armored vehicle, or they will end up dying. The group obeys, and as they leave, people approach and Isaac calls one of the soldiers to go with him. He addresses a woman who, like Isaac, already knew each other's names. While the soldier points his gun at the group of people, Isaac returns to the armored vehicle and throws grenades inside and closes the door. While the grenades explode inside, the other soldier, not understanding anything, stands there without reacting while the leader of the group welcomes Isaac and gives the soldier a chance to choose a side. 11 years have passed since that moment and we are in the present day, shortly after Dina and Ellie arrive in Seattle. Dina searches for medicine in an abandoned building, but finds nothing useful. At the same time, Ellie is on the other side. At that moment Dina finds something, but does not reveal what it is. Dina leaves and Ellie notices her acting a little strange, but Dina says that everything is fine and they continue their journey. Walking through the city, the two realize that the city has become a ghost town with the bodies of Fedra soldiers long dead. Dina sees through binoculars a place high up with the initials of the wolves. Ellie doesn't think twice about going straight to the place, like a moth to a light, but Dina warns her that it is clearly a trap. The best plan is to wait for nightfall and try to advance towards the enemy's house. They enter an abandoned music store and there Ellie finds a guitar in good condition and decides to play a little. While Ellie plays, Dina watches in admiration and emotion. When they finish, they remember Joel and that he was the one who taught Ellie to play the guitar and leave. Somewhere in the city, Isaac is in a kitchen and talking about pots and pans and cooking. He takes one of the pots and puts it on the fire. He was talking to a Scar who was being held hostage. Isaac wants to know where the Seraphites will attack next, but the hostage doesn't answer. Isaac takes the hot pot and touches Scar's hand, who howls in pain. Isaac insists on asking, but Scar is tough and doesn't tell on his own family. Isaac threatens to burn the Seraphite's entire body if he doesn't talk, and the hostage immediately holds out his other hand as a sign that no matter what Isaac does, he won't talk. Realizing that there was no point in torturing him, Isaac kills him. Outside the room is Burton, the soldier Isaac chose to follow him 11 years ago. At night outside, Ellie and Dina lurk in search of a way to infiltrate the Wolf's building. They find a window high up and use it to get in. Upon entering, they find the body of a wolf full of arrows and decide to advance into the place. They go through the door at the end of the hallway, and inside they find many bodies hanging from the ceiling with their bellies cut open. Dina, just like in the forest, can't hold herself back and vomits at the scene. Ellie also looks at it in astonishment, but soon notices a message on the wall written in blood, and she deduces that it was the same group they saw in the forest. At that moment, they hear the sound of a radio and realize that more wolves are arriving. When they arrive and see their companions hanging dead, they decide to release them, and in the meantime, Ellie and Dina hide. The atmosphere becomes extremely tense. If they are seen, it will be the end of them. While Dina hides, Ellie tries to find a way to get out of there without being seen, but one of the wolves comes to the room where Ellie is and she has no choice but to fight. She surprises him and they fight, and another soldier goes to them, but before he can shoot, Dina attacks him from behind with a shot. This alerts the others, so they need to be quick. Ellie stabs the wolf in the neck and Dina shoots at the glass, creating an exit for them. The two barely escape the place, but the chase continues. They find a small space between the rubble and escape through it. When they come out on the other side, they realize that they are in an abandoned subway station. A completely destroyed and dark place. They need to get out of there, but as soon as they take a step they realize that the wolves have turned around and surrounded them inside. They light up the place with flares, but as soon as they do, they hear the sounds of infected. They thought the place was empty, but Dina, through the sound, counts at least 5 infected. Suddenly, dozens of infected appear out of nowhere and attack everyone they see in front of them. Dina and Ellie escape into a subway, but they soon surround them. They advance inside the car, but there are many infected and shots seem not to be enough to stop them all. Dina escapes from above and pulls Ellie, who is barely caught by the infected. They continue to be chased, but they manage to jump over a fence, which gives them some time, but not enough. The turnstiles in the station are old and rusty and do not turn, trapping Dina and Ellie at the mercy of the infected. Ellie, seeing that one of the infected was about to reach and bite Dina, puts her arm in front of her to protect her and takes the bite instead. They manage to get past the turnstile and escape through the corridors of the station. Dina is very scared, because Ellie has been bitten and there is nothing she can do. For her, now she needs to kill Ellie before she transforms. When they find shelter, Dina watches Ellie from a distance and carefully. She points her gun at Ellie, deciding what she should do. To save her own life, Ellie decides to tell Dina that she is immune to the fungus of the infected. Dina does not completely believe Ellie, but Ellie suggests waiting until morning, so she can prove that she was telling the truth. Hours pass and Ellie remains normal with no signs of transformation, but despite this Dina remains extremely cautious about getting closer, although it is a fact that by now Ellie would have transformed. But suddenly she looks into Ellie's eyes and confesses that she is pregnant, leaving Ellie speechless. The next second she jumps on Ellie and kisses her. They both really wanted this, and for a moment they forget everything that is happening outside and make out. In the morning, Ellie shows Dina the bite. Dina confesses that she thought Ellie was going to die and was afraid because of that. Her plan to build a family with Ellie almost went down the drain. She admits that she always had feelings for Ellie and that she knew it was reciprocal. Ellie asks how Dina is sure that she is pregnant, and she says that as soon as they arrived in Seattle, in the abandoned building, she found pregnancy tests and took the test. The child is Jesse's, but Dina intends to start a family with Ellie. Suddenly they hear a noise and the radio receives a signal where they can hear gunshots and they hear Nora's name and a location. They run to the top of the building where they are, and in the distance they can see smoke and hear gunshots. Dina identifies the building where Nora would be, but Ellie suggests that Dina stay, for the baby's sake, but she does not intend to abandon Ellie. The mysterious survival of Han Rahan is the starting point of the narrative, which quickly delves into the interrogation of Officer Park by her leader. Park, tasked with the dangerous task of inspecting the ground floor of Lake Hill Hospital, one of the first pillars to succumb to the voracious cordyceps infection, recounts the challenges she encountered. The cleanup of the 1st through 6th floors went surprisingly smoothly, with few outbreaks of infection. The real obstacle, however, arose when descending to the basement, an area divided into 3 levels. The first of them was desolately empty, with no sign of life, not even rodents. The complication arose on the 2nd level, where Leon's team reported an overwhelming proliferation of cordyceps on the surfaces, indicating an imminent infestation. The second radio contact was alarming. Leon's voice, breathless and barely intelligible, uttered the words, "It's on the air, lock them down." Understanding the gravity of the situation, Officer Park complied with the urgent request, immediately sealing off the ground floor. The tragedy was intensified by the revelation that Leon was her own son. Meanwhile, Dina was busy devising a meticulous plan to reach the confrontation zone between the Seraphites and the wolves. Aware of the overt surveillance in the area, she knew that the task would be arduous. Dina demonstrated her strategic acumen by analyzing the map in detail and intercepting the wolves' communications. In doing so, she discovered the existence of 2 patrol lines, one to the north and one to the south, and, crucially, a gap between them, a long building that appeared to be uninhabited by soldiers, probably due to the high concentration of infected. Traversing this building would position them strategically behind the northern patrols, just 500 meters from Lake Hill Hospital. To their surprise, they even discovered that Nora was supposed to be located on the 1st floor of the hospital. Ellie, surprised by Dina's knowledge, inquired as to the source of her information. Dina explained that the wolves are careless with their communications, acting as if no one can hear them, a behavior she attributed to the Seraphites' aversion to modern technology. On the way to the building, the protagonists came across a shocking scene, a group of Seraphites brutally massacred by the wolves. The sight gave Ellie pause, questioning the wisdom of taking Dina on such a dangerous mission. It was then that Dina revealed a painful fragment of her past. Before arriving in Jackson, she lived with her mother and sister in Santa Fe. Bored with the relative safety, one day she grabbed a gun and went exploring. Upon returning, she found a looter who had taken the lives of her mother and sister. Using the weapon she was carrying, Dina eliminated him. She used this story to emphasize to Ellie that if she had not faced the stranger who destroyed her family, she would have relentlessly pursued him to the ends of the earth. The same determination drives her search for justice for Joel. After the intense conversation, the action finally unfolded. Upon cutting the chains that protected the mysterious building, the duo noticed the lack of surveillance. The vastness of the place, the open doors and the apparent lack of infected intrigued them. Aiming to cross the building to reach Lake Hill, the girls advanced cautiously. The absence of infected persisted for quite some time, but that would change drastically when they reached an abandoned warehouse. There, Dina spotted a Seraphite split in half, and upon illuminating the place, they noticed the presence of a stalker, identical to the one Ellie had faced in an abandoned mall. Ellie warned that, although she had defeated the previous stalker, the battle had not been easy, resulting in a fall and a bite. As they pondered how to deal with the infected, another appeared, and upon looking ahead, they noticed the presence of at least 6 of these creatures. Aware of the imminent danger to Dina, Ellie instructed her to run to a fenced area while she distracted the stalkers. Ellie underestimated the ferocity of the creatures, and after eliminating one, she already had 3 more on her. When the end seemed inevitable for the protagonists, a figure emerged from the shadows, eliminating the beings one by one. Ellie managed to focus her vision and recognize Jesse, who had arrived to save them at the crucial moment. The commotion, however, alerted the wolves, forcing the group to take refuge inside a park. The most curious thing was the whispering of the wolves, who avoided the place because they considered it dangerous, choosing to wait for someone to leave through the entrances. When the situation calmed down a bit, Jesse revealed that he had arrived with Tommy, but they split up in the city to cover more ground. Finding them was a mere coincidence, as he had found the map Dina had left at the theater. After congratulating her on her excellent triangulation and reprimanding Ellie for exposing them in such a way, the tension rose. The Seraphites' whistles alerted them, and from the shadows, the group witnessed that these individuals were not victims. They had a wolf in captivity. Despite the stranger's attempts to trade his life for information, the Seraphites ignored his pleas, brutally hanging and dismembering him. The situation became even more complicated when Dina's leg was pierced by an arrow from the Seraphites. Ellie asked Jessie to take her to a safe place while she tried to buy some time. Running through the forest, dodging arrows and listening to the threatening whistles, Ellie found no other alternative than to hide in the hollow of a gigantic tree. And by an incredible coincidence, when she emerged from her hiding place, she came face to face with Lake Hill Hospital. Despite the intense surveillance, capable of detecting even a cockroach, Ellie managed to infiltrate through a conveniently located hole. Knowing that she needed to act quickly, Ellie entered the first floor of the hospital and unexpectedly found herself face to face with the long-awaited Nora. Ellie asked if Nora remembered her and, upon realizing that she did, quickly asked about Abby. Instead of answering, Nora began to utter words that were clearly intended to hurt Ellie, commenting that no one should have witnessed what happened to Joel, that at night she could still hear his screams, causing her insomnia, but that, in any case, that son of a had gotten what he deserved. Nora took advantage of a moment of distraction to run through the place, but, unfortunately, she ended up in a dead-end hallway. With no alternatives, the wolf had no choice but to throw herself down the elevator shaft, which collapsed, taking her directly to the second basement floor. Ellie was forced to go down, pursued by the surveillance. Advancing cautiously through the place, she discovered that the walls were completely taken over by cordyceps, and the most terrifying thing was seeing two people embedded in the walls, emitting spores from their mouths. One of them was Leon Park, the son of the officer we saw at the beginning of the episode. Ellie found Nora a few meters ahead, already in a stage of panting, caused by the inhalation of the spores. "You're stupid," said Nora. "Don't you see that now we're both infected?" The curious thing was that Ellie seemed unchanged. At that moment, Nora realized that Ellie was the immune child, the one from the legends, the one from the Firefly Hospital. This information would be of no use, because for the first time, and as it should have been since Joel left, Ellie entered her vengeful mode, asking again where the hell Abby was. Despite being in her final moments, Nora remained loyal to her friend, but her loyalty would be tested when Ellie picked up a metal tube and, remembering Abby's actions, beat her out of her confession. The scene cuts to some point in the series timeline. Ellie wakes up in her bed, in a moment of peace, and none other than Joel Miller enters through the door, ending the episode. This episode takes us to Austin, Texas, in 1983, via flashback. Young Tommy panics, fearing his father's wrath for getting involved in the marijuana purchase. Joel, selfless, takes the blame to protect him, revealing to us the identity of his father, Javier Miller. The father, visibly upset, offers his son a beer. Javier then shares a memory from his childhood, when he stole a chocolate bar and his father punished him so severely that he broke his jaw. Javier, with a choked voice, states, "I understand that sometimes I was harsh, but I would never go that far." That night, Miller breaks down in tears, confessing his desire to be a better father, but leaving Joel with a valuable lesson. Fatherhood would one day be understood, and he hopes Joel will be even better. The scene cuts to Jackson's bar, just 2 months after Joel and Ellie's arrival. It's Ellie's 15th birthday. Joel presents Seth with a bag of Legos for his grandchildren, but he wants something in return. At home, Joel is busy making a special gift for Ellie, a meticulously crafted guitar with the moth logo his daughter loves so much. As he finishes, Tommy comes to him asking for help with Ellie, who accidentally burned her arm on a boiling pot. Ellie insinuates that the incident was not so accidental, regretting what she caused and expressing her desire to wear short sleeves again. Joel, with a tender kiss, calms Ellie. The next morning, Ellie finds Joel grumbling about something that didn't go right. We then discover what Joel wanted from Seth, the Legos for a birthday cake. Ellie, before Joel could cut the cake, devoured it. This fun moment precedes the real surprise. Ellie opens her eyes and sees her first guitar. Joel promises future lessons, but Ellie, taking advantage of the birthday, asks for a song. Joel plays Future Days by Pearl Jam, and at the end of the song, he understands what Ellie did to her arm, culminating in a happy birthday. A year passes and Ellie turns 16. They both walk through the forest, and Ellie expresses her desire to start patrolling. However, even in the midst of the apocalypse, Joel wants Ellie to stay away from the chaos and live her adolescence. Ellie's new gift reveals Joel's love for history and the past. He found a Tyrannosaurus Rex in the forest that left her ecstatic. Ellie climbed on the dinosaur's head and saw a museum in the distance. Joel, who already had this in mind, invites her, "If you don't kill yourself getting down, let's go there." At the museum, they come across an old model of the solar system. Ellie is surprised that the cranks still work, and Joel jokes, "Someone must have greased them, right?" Joel's dedication to the surprise was evident. He prepared an Apollo 10 capsule for Ellie, but reminds her, "You don't get on a spaceship without a helmet, partner." He even let her choose her helmet. Inside the capsule, Joel surprised her with recordings of space missions, providing her with the best simulator in history. Ellie was overjoyed and Joel, moved, cried to see her happy. Another year has passed. Seth has perfected his cooking skills, and Joel brings an even better cake for Ellie's 17th birthday. But when he arrives, he finds the girl with a room smelling of cigarettes and a huge new tattoo. Joel is furious, noticing his daughter's sudden adolescence. He instructs her to talk when she's calmer. In the early hours of the morning, Ellie, at the height of her rebellion, tries to move into the garage. Joel listens to her, stopping her from dragging the mattress. At the same time, he realizes that Ellie is growing up and needs her own space. He just asks for a few days to tidy up the garage for his move. Joel tries to avoid arguments, even complimenting her tattoo. However, a question arises for Joel. Why is she so attached to moths? She murmurs that it is symbolic, and Joel believes her, since he seemed to have read that it meant change and growth. Always attentive, Joel decides to intercept Gale at the restaurant. He asks if moths in this world of symbolism mean the same thing. Gale, however, dispels the illusion. Butterflies mean change and growth, moths, death. 2 years have passed. Ellie turns 19 and practices in her bed how to ask the questions that have tormented her for years. How the fireflies fought off the robbers, how Joel escaped carrying the tattoo, or if he has heard of other immune people. But the practice is interrupted. Joel has his new birthday present. At 19, Joel has given Ellie permission to join the patrol. Joel and Ellie stand guard together. Suddenly, Joel receives an emergency call. The patrol that left with Eugene has been attacked and needs reinforcements. Joel wants Ellie to come back, but she stubbornly refuses his orders. Now patrol companions, they leave together. The pair meet Eugene, Gale's husband who, at the beginning of the series, showed great hatred for Joel. Here, we finally see what has been said so much. Joel and Ellie see that Eugene has been bitten. Joel has a protocol for this, but Ellie asks to fulfill Eugene's last wish, to see Gale one last time before he dies. Joel accepts Ellie's request and says, "Well, go get the horses." As Ellie is leaving, she hesitates and distrusts Joel, who promises he won't do anything. Then we see Eugene thank him for the favor, but Joel decides to change his mind. He takes him to the river and asks him not to look. Eugene cries, begging only to see his wife, but Joel, focused on not putting anyone at risk, responds that he will take his message to Gale and that, when you love, you see the person everywhere. Eugene, after a few seconds, says, emotionally, that he saw Gale before we hear Joel take his life. Just then, Ellie arrives with the horses and is devastated, as many things go through her head. They both take the body to Jackson, and Joel tells a white lie. He says that Eugene was not afraid and left a message for Gale saying that he loved her. But Ellie, angry, screams that it is not true. She tells Gale that Eugene asked for a chance and Joel did not give it. Gale slaps Joel hard, who ends the subject angrily, reminding Joel of his promise. We return to that night of celebration in Jackson on New Year's Eve. We see how everything was fine with her family until the fateful scene with Ellie. Even how they yelled at Joel for defending her. The sequence takes us to the last scene we thought they shared together before they died. We all thought Ellie went to sleep, but that night was the breaking point for this whole story. They both watched the garden as she asked him not to interfere in her personal life anymore, not even when she was on patrol, to which Joel simply nodded. Joel also noticed that night Ellie's connection with Dina and therefore, tells her that Dina would be very lucky to have her. These words lit her up, giving her the spark needed to ask what had been tormenting her for years. Joel's tears soon fell. In order not to miss another day of his daughter's life, he decided to tell her the truth. All of Ellie's questions were answered with just nods as the tears didn't stop falling, until they reached the subject of immunity. Ellie screams that Joel took away everyone's chance to live, that it was her destiny to die so that her life would matter. Joel did it all out of selfishness, but our friend responds, because I love you in a way you wouldn't understand. His voice becomes increasingly high-pitched and shaky, and he hopes that, one day, she will be able to understand. This is how Ellie ends this memory, saying that she doesn't believe she'll be able to forgive him, but she'd like to try. At that moment, we see Joel turn around with his eyes shining. Back to the present. After Ellie has completed her revenge against Nora, and is returning to find Dina and the others. Everything takes place in the theater, with the sound of the wolves on the radio in the background. In this scenario, the order is to regroup and maintain discretion in communications. Jesse begins the procedure to remove the arrow from Dina's leg, who, deeply shaken and afraid, begs her former partner not to abandon her and not die. Jesse feels unable to act effectively due to the sudden movements and lack of confidence in his abilities. Therefore, he turns to Dina and explains that she needs to trust him, because he knows what he is doing. With this premise, he continues to pour alcohol on the wound, offering Dina the bottle to drink, but she refuses without explanation. With Dina's consent, Jesse drives the arrow even deeper into her leg until it comes out the other side, to avoid causing more damage with the tip. Later, the extraction is a success. While Dina rests, Jesse stands guard, listening for any noise. Someone knocks on the door. It's Ellie. Jesse suspects that Ellie is alone and asks her the name of her horse. Ellie answers correctly, and after a moment of reflection, Jesse lets her in. Ellie immediately demands to know where Dina is, ignoring questions about her own whereabouts. Upon reaching the dressing room where her girlfriend is, Ellie sees her alive and, in a gesture of affection, wakes her with gentle touches. Seeing Dina's wound, Ellie asks about her son. Dina, feeling good due to maternal instincts, assures her that he is safe. Dina notices blood stains on Ellie's clothes and, realizing that she is injured, begins to clean her wounds, asking what happened. Ellie then reveals that she has finally found Nora and, with great effort, managed to get Abby's location after forcing her to talk. However, Nora only said 2 words, whale and wheel. Ellie now thinks that these words may not mean anything, since Nora was infected and incoherent. Furthermore, Ellie reveals that although she thought it would be difficult to get Nora to talk, it was an easy and pleasurable process, as she beat her relentlessly. She decided not to kill her, preferring to let her suffer, although she is not sure if Nora deserved that end. Dina does not understand the logic, so Ellie explains that long before Jackson, there was a Firefly base in Salt Lake City with a hospital that was developing a cure. For that, Ellie would have to die. Upon learning of this, Joel decided to kill everyone in the hospital to stop him, including Abby's father, whom he shot in the head to save Ellie. That is why Joel was killed. Seeing the shock on Dina's face, Ellie apologizes for not telling her the truth sooner. Dina decides that they should return to Jackson, and Ellie accepts with resignation. The next day, as they pack their things to leave, Ellie tries to tune in the radio to find out about the wolves, but discovers that they have changed the frequency. At that moment, Dina approaches her girlfriend to give her a lucky bracelet before the expedition. Jesse sarcastically says that Ellie can go alone if she wants him to stay with Dina. However, Ellie makes it clear that it makes more sense for them to go together to the meeting point with Tommy. So, after a tense farewell between couples and ex-couples, Ellie and Jesse advance through the city. On the way, after mentioning that the meeting point is a bookstore, Ellie asks how Jesse found the theater. He returns the question, wanting to know what she did the night before. Without an immediate answer, Jesse agrees to talk and says that they took the most logical route to the city. After finding their horse, they saw the graffiti on the television station and decided to split up to cover the area. They soon found the theater after 2 long days full of scares. Ellie thanks him for the information, but before continuing, Jesse realizes that hours earlier Dina had begged for her life for fear of dying. Curiously, she refused a sip of whiskey, despite never rejecting alcohol. Ellie claims not to know what is happening, but Jesse accuses her of lying, stating that she knows very well that they are in a place where they have started a new relationship. In the midst of their recriminations, Jesse guesses that Dina is pregnant and asks Ellie to act surprised when Dina tells him. However, Jesse makes it clear that, due to his future fatherhood, he cannot afford to die because of her. They are in a war zone, and all he wants is to find Tommy and get out of the city alive to get his son out of Seattle. They continue moving forward, but as the rain begins to fall, they seek shelter in the parking lot of a building. This choice ends up revealing their position, forcing them to hide behind boxes. At that moment, they discover that the wolves have cornered a Seraphite, who begins to recite prayers to his prophet, indicating that he has arrived there and now it is time to rest. The wolves demand to know how he got through the perimeter, and when he receives no response, they strip him of his clothes and drag him to the base. Observing the scene, Ellie feels the need to intervene to save him, but Jesse stops her, reminding her that they must prioritize their own lives. Once alone, Ellie is determined to go after the wolves to save the Seraphite. However, Jesse vehemently reminds her that wolves and Seraphites kill, disembowel and torture each other, and that he is not willing to risk his life there to save a stranger in a war that does not concern them. Upon hearing this, Ellie comes to her senses and continues advancing with Jesse. Meanwhile, at the wolves' base, Park arrives to inform Isaac that all his orders have been carried out, but the officers are terrified. Isaac asks if she isn't afraid too, but Park ignores the question. Isaac then mentions Abby. Park reveals that he hasn't heard from her since the previous day and that he hasn't found anything about Owen and Mel either. Isaac realizes, furious, that Abby's entire team decided to disappear that night. Although they can replace all the soldiers, there is only one Abby. Faced with the situation, Park, tired of not understanding what is happening, mentions that although Abby is an excellent soldier, they still have an entire army standing. She even dares to ask Isaac if he is in love with Abby. Isaac makes it clear that since it is likely that they will both be dead by dawn, he questions what will happen to the army out there, since Abby was supposed to be their replacement as leader. Meanwhile, Jackson's group finally arrives at the bookstore, but does not find Tommy. Ellie suggests that her uncle may be in trouble, but Jesse trusts that he will return soon. They decide to stay there to wait out the storm. Over time, we realize that Ellie begins to take an interest in the local children's books. Jesse compliments her on her choice, and when she tries to explain about their relationship, he prefers to leave the subject for later, since they have many problems at the moment. Therefore, he makes it clear that, although he loves Dina, he knows that he does not love her as much as Ellie does, and he is aware of this because in the past he met a girl in a group of migrants who arrived in Jackson. With her, he spent the best 2 weeks of his life, although before leaving she asked him to join her group. Jesse loved her, but he preferred to stay in Jackson, since his people gave him shelter and raised him. Their conversation is interrupted when they hear on the radio that the wolves are under fire from a sniper near the creek and that this man is not a simple Seraphite. Immediately, they both understand that it is Tommy and that he needs help. They decide to go to the pier. Once they climb to the top of the building to find the right direction, they hear gunshots coming from the north again. Looking through the binoculars, Ellie notices the Ferris wheel on one of the piers, which has a picture of a whale on it. It is an aquarium, and she understands that this is the place Nora indicated. She is willing to go after Abby. However, when Jesse reminds her that the priority should be helping Tommy, she begins to doubt that the shooter is really her uncle. Furthermore, as far as they know, Tommy cornered the wolves, and Ellie believes that, if she were in his place, he would support the idea of going after Abby. She also remembers that, if 3 more people had voted the same way as Jesse during the vote, he and Tommy would have gone after Abby without hesitation. However, Jesse reveals that he actually voted against it, as he knows very well that all of Ellie's actions are guided by her selfishness and would not be beneficial to the community. Faced with this revelation, Ellie expresses her contempt for Jackson. In Jesse's eyes, she becomes the villain and he the hero. Despite everything, Jesse decides to continue on his way to support Tommy. Before leaving, he says, "I hope you survive." As night falls, as the storm increases, Ellie finally reaches the dock. However, since there are wolves nearby, she plans to shoot them from a distance to eliminate them without being discovered. At that moment, several boats commanded by Isaac arrive to transport the cargo. In this situation, the boats move away from the pier with their lights off to avoid being detected. This way, Ellie is able to advance unhindered to a small motorboat. After turning it on, she begins sailing towards the Ferris wheel. Everything seems to be going well, but due to the intensity of the storm, she is soon intercepted by a large wave that capsizes her boat. Despite the setback, Ellie manages to swim to the shore, where she meets a small Seraphite who, without wasting time, alerts his people, since the storm has diverted Ellie from his path. However, Ellie feels weak and is unable to move away in time, which results in her capture. 2 Seraphites drag her to the gallows they have prepared. There, she is met by a woman named Scar, who follows the orders of the small Seraphite. He orders that Ellie must die. Then her head is placed on the gallows, beginning the process of strangling and desecrating her womb. However, just before Ellie dies, the Seraphites hear the alarm indicating that their village is under attack. Faced with this situation, they abandon Ellie to join their companions in the battle. Thus, Ellie returns to the shore, takes her boat and heads towards the Ferris wheel, while in the background echoes the explosions caused by the wolves that are besieging the Seraphites' village. Finally, she reaches the aquarium, which she finds uninhabited on the surface. Therefore, she advances without any problems and infiltrates through a window. Once inside, she finds no one either, so she takes the opportunity to put on dry clothes and dry her weapon. However, she still does not find anyone, so she continues advancing through a corridor of pipes in complete darkness, which ends in a gallery where she finally discovers a trail of footprints. Faced with this discovery, she turns off her flashlight and begins to advance stealthily, ready to shoot. In this way, he finally hears someone's voice and, upon following the sound, finds Owen and Mel, who are immersed in a heated argument. He wants them to join the battle, crossing enemy lines to support Abby, while Mel fears for her life and vehemently refuses to do so. With no other options, Owen decides to go alone. When they finally notice Ellie's presence, she greets them with a clear order to raise their hands, while demanding Abby's location. Faced with this demand, Owen complies, but remembers that in the past he spared her life and assures her that they do not know Abby's whereabouts. However, Ellie overheard their conversation and knows that this is a lie. To avoid a conflict, Ellie orders them to indicate on the map where to find Abby, but they must do so separately. Only then can she confirm the veracity of her words. When she sees that the locations match, Mel is willing to cooperate. However, Owen fervently asks her not to do so, as he is convinced that Ellie will kill them. However, she makes it clear that if they obey, she will spare their lives, as she is not like them. With no other options, Owen agrees to indicate the location, but in fact he is lying. When he goes to the map, he takes out a gun with the intention of shooting Ellie. However, she gets ahead and shoots first, going through his throat and killing him instantly. Owen was not the only one affected, as the bullet passes completely through him and grazes Mel's neck, puncturing her jugular vein and causing her to start bleeding. Realizing that her death is imminent, Mel reveals that she is pregnant and begs Ellie to use her knife to perform a cesarean section before it is too late. Ellie agrees, but as she is unfamiliar with the procedure, Mel uses her last seconds of life to explain that she must make a small, low transverse incision and make sure to cut the umbilical cord. Upon realizing that Mel is dead, Ellie feels overwhelmed by tears of helplessness and decides to remain still next to the pregnant woman's body while she cries silently. As time passes, Tommy and Jesse arrive at the scene and observe the painful scene. Upon seeing his niece's face, Tommy understands that she is deeply suffering from what has happened, so he rushes to get her out of there, while Jesse spends a few more seconds contemplating the lifeless bodies, immersed in his thoughts. They manage to reach the theater safely, where Dina immediately realizes that her partner is traumatized while the men begin to plan their escape route. Ellie approaches Tommy, who tries to comfort her, reminding her that the wolves she killed were also involved in Joel's crime and that they made decisions that led them to this fate. This is the only truth she must remember. However, Ellie can't stop thinking that Abby is still alive. Despite this, with Tommy's advice, she accepts that she will have to learn to live with this reality. When Tommy walks away to pack his things, Ellie takes the opportunity to thank Jesse for coming back to her and acknowledges that he did so because he is a good person. Jesse responds that his decision was motivated by the belief that if he were lost in the world, he would be happy to know that there is someone willing to come and save him. Their conversation is abruptly interrupted when gunshots begin to ring out, which makes them run at high speed in search of the source of the sound. However, as they cross the threshold, Jesse is shot and killed immediately. Ellie manages to take cover and, from there, asks Jesse to get up, but he does not respond. At that moment, Ellie discovers that it is Abby who has cornered Tommy and warns that if Ellie does not surrender, she will kill Tommy too. With no other options and with a heavy heart, Ellie comes out of hiding, at which point Abby realizes that this is the girl she left alive in the past. At this point, Ellie argues that the person Abby is looking for is her, since she killed her friends while searching for her. Furthermore, she reveals that she already knows why Abby killed Joel and that she is the one she is really looking for. Therefore, she begs Abby to let Tommy live. Abby, furious, reprimands her for having spared her life in the past only to have her murder her friends now. At that moment, Abby points her gun at Ellie and a shot is fired as the scene cuts. We return to the recent past to see Abby waking up from a nap after receiving Isaac's order to meet with him. Once standing, Abby heads to the top of a platform, from where she observes the wolves' base, 3 days before the tragic events. And that was the last episode of the second season of The Last of Us. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel for more content and leave a comment with what you thought. See you next time.